Hello, my name is Nur Amirah Badriah binti Ismail. Here in this video, we will present about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on food and beverage entrepreneurs. Our group members is Muhammad Amir bin Mursidi, Tengku Muhammad Syamim bin Tengku Zaman, Siti Nur Izzati binti Jamri, and me, Nur Amirah Badriah binti Ismail. Our thesis statement is impact of COVID-19 on food and beverage entrepreneurs make their company need to adapt to new norms and new standards or procedure in making their business running steadily. The first main point is environmental change by Meng John I and Persat P 2020. COVID-19 changed the environment for food and consumer good manufacture from the perspectives of 3C, which is customer, consumer, and competitor. Due to change in purchasing behavior and requests for suspension of business and school closure, the previous balance between supply and demand was greatly disrupted. This was compounded by the downsizing of the field system due to remote work and the responsibilities of manufacturer as supplier. And it also increased the demand for hygiene products such as instant foods and other store food and masks to the extent that inventory are tight. And lastly, entrepreneurs are needed because they provide better solutions to issues that may arise in the marketplace. Second point is many business that work through traditional, which is face-to-face interactions, there become a prudent necessities to change present business practice by John I and Persat P 2020. Because the environmental change, some entrepreneurs' business has been able to transition more swiftly than others. The desire of cooperation executive to engage in the marketplace while also adhering to the relevant regulation is the reason behind this. Due to the need to change swiftly, this has created a lot of conflict among enterprises. This implies that instead of providing on-site service, the food sector has had to convert to providing takeaway service, which has implicated their supply chain in terms of their product and service offered. Critical comment based on Article 1 for tone and bias is this author personal tone inspire a serious atmosphere typical of non-fictions such as this article. The mood for this piece might be considered studious or academic. For intended audience, Article 1, this article from an academic journal is intended for entrepreneurs who can act quickly when faced with an impact such as being affected by COVID-19. Writers often use technical language or jargon and assume that the reader already know what is going to happen due to pandemic. For purpose of article, this is an informative article which inform readers about the impact that the entrepreneur of food and beverage need to face during COVID-19. And the last one for additional comment about the article is this article is well written and the supporting detail also strong because the author really research the impact an entrepreneur has to be faced and also gave an expert opinion.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Amir bin Mursidi. I will continue the presentation. Okay, the next point is the pandemic is facing demand supply volatility by Nagesh Manipali and Suraj Nagvenkar 2020. Food and beverage manufacturers and processors are more likely to be affected by the shortage of labor and raw material required in the production process. For food retail outlets, the challenge would be to deal with the possibility of the irregular footfall of consumers and contrastingly to also assess the possibility of stockpiling food and beverage products to ensure continuity in consumer access to products they intend to purchase. Influenced by the fact that more and more consumers are increasingly isolating themselves from public occurrences or are quarantined for testing positive. Food service outlets are facing challenge with declining consumer footfall, together with a shortage of labor and food supplies. The next point is the pandemic COVID-19 made a lack of trade and logistics for the food and beverage industry by Nagesh Manepali and Suraj Nagvenkar 2020. Trade restrictions imposed by several countries to curb the outbreak of COVID-19 has substantially affected global logistics and transportations, which has an implicated effect on the food and beverage industry. Then, restrictions have had a direct impact on the food supply chain with the tightening of transportation and port capacities. Shortage of food supply, which is likely leading to choke production and affected availability of food and beverage products at retail level. This thing leading to an increase in shipping and freight costs. Critical comment based on the Article 2 for tone and bias. This author uses a formal tone and not a persuasive tone because he informs the audience about the impact of COVID-19 to the food industry. For intended audience, this article is intended for the community to always be prepared during this COVID-19 pandemic, and entrepreneurs must also always find solutions in overcoming the problem of food supply constraints when the COVID-19 pandemic hits the world. Next, purpose of article for Article 2 is this is an informative article which is to inform the community about the effects of the COVID-19 on the community and also on the food supply chain. Lastly, critical comment based on the Article 2 for additional comments is this is an informative article which is to inform the community about the effects of COVID-19 pandemic to the community and also to the food supply chain. The author can convey the effects of the pandemic to the food industry clearly and smoothly, and the audience can understand the info presented by the author.
Now we go to main point number 5. COVID-19 has put a strain on food supply chain that have never been seen before. Now we continue with supporting detail by Jill E. 2020. Due to the short-run demand of food during the pandemic, it caused the change in customer purchase behavior. With stock out at supermarket and long line of customers outside some stores in the early stage of the pandemic, many consumers went to smaller retailers and local providers inside their communities. food supply chain that source in season fresh product from local vendor will be less prone to cross-border interruption. Because of the cause of COVID-19, which is from food, consumers' faith in the food system security and reliability may have been damaged by the COVID-19 outbreak and tend to choose local food.
Next is main point number 6, insufficient labor supply.
Now we continue with supporting detail. Lack of labor during COVID-19 pandemic caused a huge disturbance in some area because it needed human labor to complete such as in animal creation, agriculture, planting, collecting, and preparing harvest. Due to the lack of manpower, sickness, and physical distance, the crisis lowered the capacities of enterprise during production. This condition showed that delivery of food and horticulture information, making it difficult to provide business with a stable supply of food. It may require overtime to change the characteristic of mechanical progression and upskilling of the work power when the food production activities go with the flow in time. Now we go to the critical comment based on third article, which is food supply chain during the COVID-19 pandemic, written by Jill E. Hobbs. Based on this article, tone or bias, this author used a formal and excessive tone and not persuasive tone because he only informed the reader about the impact of the food supply chain during COVID-19. These articles are intended to the society to behave their buying behavior during pandemic and also to other entrepreneurs to improve their business when the COVID-19 is in environment. The purpose of article is informative article, which is to notify the society about the implication of COVID-19 pandemic for food chain and customer behavior during pandemic. In addition comment, the article is biased and only discuss the effect of the demand side on the food supply chain, and the author could conclude advice on how to overcome the negative customer behavior in society and advice to improve business operation.
Okay, we will continue with main idea number 7, that is potential disruption related to beverage industry because of COVID-19, Sharma and Shilhal 2019. The supply chain of the food and beverage industry is associated with uncertainties and delays because the industry itself is dynamic in nature and carries a risk proposition. And the next is disruption risk can impact the sustainability of supply chain, and disruption in a particular function of a supply chain can influence the entry supplies networks due to the COVID effects. And the last one is economic growth opportunities in the industry are threatened by such disruption, which may also damage the environment. And we will continue with the main idea number 8, that is product expiry as one of the impact of the pandemic. The first point is product have been placed in retail store to meet the demand of the peak buying season, but those products now had a high chance of reaching their expiry dates. And the second one is the product need reduce this trade product cost to survive in the industry. And the third one is it decrease in sale revenue because of expiry product may result in a loss to entrepreneurs. And the last one is shape which trader deteriorates mainly due to refusals to provide compensation for product expired. And we will move to critical comments based on the article number 4. For their tone and bias, this author used a formal language, so writing tone is common in academic or professional context and not persuasive tone because he only informs about the impact of COVID-19 in the food and beverage industry. For intended audience, the article about coronavirus disease, commonly known as the COVID-19 pandemic, on the food and beverage industry is still investigated in the study. It examines both of short-term and medium to long-term impacts of pandemic. Purpose of article: this is an informative article which is to inform viewers about the impact of COVID-19 in the food and beverage industry. And lastly, for additional comments, this article is an interesting study as the author used cutting-edge methodology to acquire a unique dataset. The paper is well written and organized in general. For overall conclusion, the coronavirus pandemic has reached unparalleled levels of severity around the world, killing hundreds of thousands of people and impacting the lives of millions of people in various ways. Not to be forget, food and beverage entrepreneurs are also being affected by the time and required to improve their management in business operation. Being an entrepreneur during COVID-19 not only may lose a great profit like before, but also affect other factors such as change in operation and environment, logistic, food demand, lack of manpower, potential disruption according to food and beverage, and also expiry of product. As the statement mentioned before, entrepreneurs are also facing a change in customer behavior when buying stuff as the customer are panic buying during a pandemic. Hence, the entrepreneurs are needed to find other ways to fight and overcome this impact on purpose in making the business line of the economic sector. And I think this all from our group. Thank you for watching.